Welcome to Taking the Myth, your topical, skeptical discussion show. I'm Stephen Knight, and joining me to bring you some hard-hitting post-election analysis is Iram Ramzan. Iram, how are you doing?
That was an election? Why didn't anyone tell me?
To be honest, I'm fairly impressed I got the phrase hard-hitting post-election analysis out without either saying erection or something worse.
Yes. Well done.
Thank you. It's almost like I'm a podcaster who speaks, isn't it?
It's almost like you're not a 5-year-old.
Thank you. Well, we have got a lot to talk about, and as usual, we have about 40 topics to cover, and we managed to get through about 3 of them. We are in lockdown again, so maybe we could just mention that briefly. I tell you what we'll do is, because I know you like to vent on this topic, we'll treat it somewhat like a therapy session. How about you just have 3 minutes or so just to unload free association, if you will, on the lockdown. I'll even let you throw in a couple of racial slurs, if that's your thing, and then we can move on to the meat and veg. What do you reckon? Lockdown? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we knew it was coming, didn't we?
Yes.
We just knew. So we've been in lockdown. What is it, week? Is it week?
Week 450 million is what it is. I've gone feral.
Okay, so it's been a while.
Yes.
Yeah, so because cases were rising, hospital admissions were rising in England, Boris decided that we needed to have another lockdown. Again, about 2 weeks after he laughed at Keir Starmer, leader of the Labour Party, for suggesting the same thing. Keir Starmer said we need a quote-unquote circuit breaker. I don't know about you, but I really hate these phrases that they're coining now during lockdown.
Yeah.
To make imprisoning us all just sound cool. Let's have a circuit
It's like,
breaker.
how can we make a shit sandwich sound more appetising? You know, like a feces souffle. Yeah, it's not good. And Boris, to his, bless him, looks like a sack of meat clinging onto a skeleton. He looks like a destroyed man, doesn't he? He looks like the weight of this has really come down on him and took its toll.
Well, yeah, you can't exactly blame him for looking tired. He had corona, went into hospital, and he's got a newborn baby to help look after.
It wasn't the beacon of, peak health before all this either, might add.
He was a proper fatty.
So that's where we are. We can't see our friends or family, can't go to the pub.
Can't go to the mosque.
Can't go to the mosque. Yeah. It's rubbish. It is rubbish.
Did you notice though when Boris made his announcement, and it was on Halloween, quite apt. It looked suspiciously like he'd had a haircut. Getting that lockdown haircut in. I played it very clever as well, and I got in a haircut about a week beforehand.
I've mistimed this every single time, just as we went into lockdown the first time.
Should have asked me. I'm like the resident Pandora. Not
Pandora?
Pandora. Nope. Is this like Terminator Robocop? Oh, Cassandra.
Who the hell's Cassandra?
Do you not know your mythology?
I mean, I can tell you about Star Wars. Is that what you mean?
No.
I am getting better at cutting my own hair. So if everything else goes south, maybe I could have a resurgence in a career as a barber. Perhaps if number 2 back and sides and cut short on top is your thing. If the dyke cut is what you're after, I'm your man.
If looking like an absolute tosspot is your thing, then Stephen is your man.
Right, is that lockdown? Did we do it? Did we get it in under 4 minutes? I think we did, didn't we?
Yes. Here's hoping that we are all out on December the 2nd, but I highly doubt it.
Well, I don't know if you noticed. I don't know if I'm going to be the first to inform you of this, but there's been somewhat of a political event in the US of A of late.
Right.
Yeah, the US elections. Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, and I think we speculated on the last podcast. I mean, we've been open. I mean, I've been open. I'm pretty sure. I can't quite remember. I'm pretty sure you're not a big fan of Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form.
Are you?
No, I didn't want.
What did I say last time? Did I say who I thought would win? Because I'm going to look really stupid now.
Let's just say we both said Biden and we were brilliant. No one will check.
We did. So we both called it pretty early.
Well, I think...
I told you, Cassandra. You're going to Google Cassandra. You need to look this up.
That'll be my homework assignment for the evening, Cassandra.
I believe I said Cassandra.
But we did kind of speculate that nothing was happening from the Democrats really to win over Donald Trump supporters, and we saw Donald Trump get record votes again this time. So, I mean, that can't be written off. You can't. The Trump project, although Trump has lost the election, that will continue in some way, shape, or form. But I think we kind of settled on the idea that if Democrats that didn't come out last time realised they'd made a mistake and came out this time, that'd make all the difference. And I think that's what's happened. Now, we've got a bit of an issue here because on the night of the election, Donald Trump was leading, and then there was a catastrophic inability to understand what a mail ballot was or an absentee ballot was, or at least Republicans pretending they had no idea what this was. And they all came in later on. Certain states have rules as to when on election night you're allowed to start counting the mail-in ballots. There are different rules as to when they must be postmarked and how long after they've arrived you can open them and add them, etc. So that gave a very skewed picture for a while of where we were in terms of votes, and things changed after the night of the election quite drastically in many swing states because, first of all, Donald Trump has spent a significant portion of his time telling people how unreliable and bad voting by mail is. So a lot of his supporters...
Yeah, he's the one that urged them to come out
exactly
and vote in person.
Second thing is we're in a pandemic, so a lot more people are going to post ballots than turn up. And third thing, I think if you're a Democrat, you're more likely to social distance and think of that as an important thing to do during the pandemic. Let's just say I find it very hard to believe it'd be Democrats on the street shouting about COVID hoax, lift the lockdown, that kind of thing. People were showing comparisons between Donald Trump rallies versus Joe Biden rallies to say, look at the turnout here, there's no enthusiasm for Biden. What they weren't really telling you was that the Democrats had put in place some very serious restrictions in terms of numbers at their rallies to follow social distancing guidelines because they tend to care about the pandemic. So it looks like Biden's going to be the president. He looks like he won the election fair and square, but that's not what Donald Trump and his camp are saying. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a conspiracy.
It's a stolen election, isn't it?
It's a stolen election. Oh my God. I mean, it is 4 more years. 4 more years. I mean, I think it's absolutely incredible what's going on. I mean, I knew it was going to be a very, very close call. And if it hadn't been for the coronavirus, I think I would have said it would definitely be 4 more years of Trump.
Yeah.
But apparently he was only getting about 43% approval ratings. So, and that was before the coronavirus pandemic. So clearly something has gone wrong. And it's not just to do with the pandemic. There's so many other factors here. But at the same time, as you've pointed out before, he got over 71 million votes, and that's supposed to be a record total for a losing candidate. So all these people now who are trying to say that populism has been defeated, well, it really hasn't.
Hell no.
If it had been, then Biden would have just smashed it, and he didn't. It wasn't the most. It was a very blah.
The numbers suggest he won convincingly, but it was still very close. I mean, what it indicates is a very divided nation, for sure. There's something I think I need to get across as well on the podcast, because I've spent a lot of time on Twitter and on here mocking people for saying Donald Trump is some sort of Nazi fascist dictator. You know, he's going to be herding people into concentration camps. He's going to bring about the next Nazi reign. That, you know, all this hyperbole about him, that to me made criticising him more difficult. It made sensible voices more reluctant, or they didn't get heard as much, or they got dismissed because the people shouting Nazi fascist and all the hysteria and hyperbole just got the most attention, unfortunately. And that played into his base. His base could say, look at the loony liberal, look at the loony left shouting Nazi and fascist. And they were right. Now, I will openly and honestly concede that if you were to give me an example of somebody who lost an election, tried to stop the count as he was losing the election, cried fraud as soon as the election was over on no evidence whatsoever, and refused to concede, I would say that definitely in the ledger goes on the side of fascism. I will openly say that. You know, that's straight out of the fascist dictator playbook, that kind of thing, for sure. However, when all this is done and all this is over, I still maintain that Donald Trump will essentially just have been a one-term president who got democratically elected out of office before he was able to oppress anyone, and he didn't even manage to implement a single fascist and or Nazi policy. He's not a Nazi fascist dictator at this point. Now, if he attempts a coup and will not go peacefully, obviously I will be wrong, and I will eat humble pie, lots of humble American pie. What do you think? Nazi fascist?
Yeah.
Yep. Done.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm still astonished that they chose Joe Biden, the Democrats, because I mean he's old. Let's face it.
They're all really. All the candidates are really old in America. It's really strange.
Old white men.
Yeah.
Old white men. A very mediocre campaign. I mean, the only thing he maybe had going for him, it's probably, I don't know, the fact that he's got a woman of mixed heritage stood next to him, Kamala Harris, who, you know...
Her, just so we're clear.
Yeah, we know her pronouns, so we can say her. You know, I don't know, I think she's tried to please both the progressives and those on the other side with some of her, you know, ideas, and she's ended up pleasing nobody. So it's very hard to know exactly what she thinks, but, you know, she has tried more and more to appeal to the progressive side of the Democrat Party. So you have to wonder what exactly their leadership is going to be like. Is it going to be... Do you think it's going to be more Trudeau-esque, you know, people kind?
I don't.
Or do you think it's not going to be as bad as that?
Definitely not. I think they're of a different generation.
Biden wants people to wear masks in public, for crying out loud. I mean, outdoors. I think that's just... I mean, I know he has to try and do his best to tackle the pandemic once, you know, if he gets to be in the White House. But I think that's going a step too far, and that's appealing to a certain tribe of people.
Yeah, I mean, he's been in the game so long. He's a career politician, isn't he? I mean, he knows how to signal to his base. He knows what he needs to say, and what he does when he's in power is a separate thing, I suppose. And I honestly do think it'll be very vanilla, and I actually think that's a great thing. Make America boring again is my campaign slogan. I don't have to want to hear about your fucking leader on my TV, in my 24-hour news election cycle all over UK media. Do you think the Americans follow Brexit when that happened, or our elections? Do you think they can name any of our fucking leaders?
I don't think they even covered our bloody election.
I've got an superiority complex about those goddamn Yanks.
But they have good teeth.
They have great teeth, yeah. The old stereotype about Brits' teeth and American teeth is true. Yeah, so I'd just like the temperature to be reduced a little bit, and I think you will see that with Biden. And I think there's also a very good point to be made about political violence and vandalism and things like that. I mean, we're not sure yet, because obviously it looks like Biden has won the election, but it's not been certified and the transfer of power hasn't taken place, so we don't know what might happen. However, they weren't boarding up shops and businesses on the sidewalks of Washington because they were scared that Trump fans were going to riot. were they? That there's obviously a problem of violence on the left that I don't...
I was just going to say, yeah, it was supposed to be the left who was going to be rioting. I mean, look what happened with the Black Lives Matter protest.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I will not play down the lunatics on the right wing. Obviously, we saw, after a lot of conspiracy theories were spread about voter fraud and shenanigans in Pennsylvania, I think the police stopped a group of people in a car with weapons that had some nefarious intentions. We'll know more about that as more comes out. So obviously the threat persists on the right, but I don't think these people on the far left who are anarchists in essence will think their work is done with Joe Biden in the White House. I just think they will push even further. There will be more things they're unhappy about. You can't satisfy these type of people, is what I'm saying. They're not asking for anything tangible or realistic, and they're certainly not asking for it in a realistic way. So it'll be interesting to see how he responds to this sort of left-wing militant faction that goes under the guise of Antifa, sometimes BLM. So I'm hoping that calms down, but I very much doubt it. We might have to talk about Maajid, we might have to stage an intervention.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big admirer of Maajid, all the work he's done. I still am. You can't take his liberal credentials, his activism, you can't take any of that away from him. He's done some stellar work in the realm of combating Islamism and promoting Islamic reform. That's always a project I've been very highly skeptical of, but it didn't really matter because we had somebody challenging Islamism in the strongest possible terms and doing so with liberal principles, defending secularism, defending freedom of expression, individual rights, that sort of thing. And just of late, I don't know whether Twitter's getting to us all or the American election's getting to us all or the news cycle in general, but he seems to have been body swapped. He seems to have been tweeting things that sort of contradict his previous output or his previous level of objectivism. To tie it into the US election, I mean, there's other things that I'd like to point out, but he seems to be tweeting and sharing a lot of things, stories, tweets, etc., that fall on the side of promoting conspiracy theories. He seems to be promoting the idea that there are some credible reasons to doubt the election result, and he's kind of doing this under the guise of, hey, I'm just asking questions, hey, I just want justice to be done, hey, I just want the law to be served. Yeah, well, we all do, but we're not all stoking the fire of conspiracy by tweeting things that are either debunked, demonstrably false, or unsupported. You tweet things to the tune of, oh, can we start taking this seriously now? As if these things have credibility that should make us halt and think twice before realising that Joe Biden's won the election. And it seems wildly out of character for him. I don't know if you've seen some of the things he's been sharing around the election result and what your thoughts are.
I have. I think it's utterly bizarre. He goes from sharing some random blog or news site that doesn't look credible. The website, something like thetruth.com or something. And then in between that, he'll tweet a verse of the Quran or something, or a hadith, and then if somebody tries to challenge his views, I mean, respectable people like Maajid, what the fuck, his response is just to send them a link to a previous tweet of his, like that's going to answer the question, and it's like, no, Maajid, it's not. We don't know what the hell is going on, and it's the same thing with, I guess, his comments on Paris and Macron, which we'll come to shortly. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's completely out of character. It's difficult to know. I mean, part of me thinks, fuck me, I hope he's right, because I don't see how he recovers credibility, because let's be fair, Majid's not just doing this on Twitter. He's not some guy just spreading shit on Twitter. I mean, that's par for the course. It is Twitter. That's what Twitter's for, I think. But he's a popular host for a London radio station, LBC, listened by him, a huge audience, and he's taking this issue to that as well. Segment after segment, his entire timeline now is about challenging the credible result of the election, and he's...
Why is he taking it, to heart? I mean... You're not even in America, to quote that guy in Mean Girls. You don't even go here. What the hell?
But it's just so strange. And he even took issue with Sky News talking, matter of fact about Joe Biden having won the election. He was annoyed with that. Now, that's not something you get annoyed about if you are just, quote unquote, asking questions. He really feels there is something to this. He's spending a lot of time on it. And I will confidently say, what is it? It's the 11th of November. It's 10 to 8 in the evening. At this moment in time of recording, every single scrap of evidence presented for voter fraud, and I'm not just talking about the odd person being a bit naughty with the ballots or what have you. That happens every election. There's a significant number of voter fraud in every election, but the thing is, it's so minuscule as it couldn't overturn the election. For it to overturn this election, it'd have to be so astronomical in scale as to be mind-blowing and undetectable at the same time, which is incompatible. Everything I've seen put forward has either been debunked within moments, it's false information, or it's a basic inability to add numbers up correctly. And this isn't just from people on Twitter, no, but it's stuff that Trump shared, stuff that the Republicans have put out there. These are your best guys. These are the guys that are supposed to go to the court with all the evidence, and they can't even get it right.
I mean, wasn't the lawyer for Trump's side saying that there wasn't any evidence of any fraud?
I think the initial rulings on some of the lawsuits were thrown out. They can take them further to a different court now, and we'll see. Maajid seems to be under the impression that because lawsuits are being filed, there's something credible, and anyone can file a lawsuit. It does not indicate credible evidence. So we'll see how this goes. And I openly admit, if there is an ounce of credible evidence to suggest this election has been stolen, and I'm not talking about petty little fraud here and there, I'm talking about a mass effort to change the outcome of the election that has succeeded, I will hold my hands up and say that's happened, and I will shout about it from the rooftops, because that's a massive injustice. It's just that there's fuck all, and everything that is being shared by Maajid and others, it just demonstrates a complete inability to think critically on this issue. So I can't help but think, get well soon. I think that's my only takeaway from this episode. Man down, Iram, man down.
Cis man down, by the way.
Cis man down. Doesn't he get, Asian points? And Muslim as well, so they're on the, intersectionality scale. That's got to be worth something. Do you subtract a cis from an Asian? How does it work? I don't know. I mean, what if he was sort of like a cross-dressing cisgender Asian secular Muslim? Where is he on the hierarchy then? Is it more important or less important than a one-legged lesbian albino?
Have you ever come across a one-legged lesbian albino? I
can get you a one-legged lesbian albino here in 5 minutes.
Do it.
Well, we've got our hashtag for the...
I think...
fucking hell.
Somebody posted a picture up, with Trump's tweet where he said, I won by a lot.
Yes.
And there was a picture of Napoleon. Napoleon at Waterloo.
Right. I mean, a final thing I'll add is, if there are any Americans listening, all three of you, I appreciate that I don't live in America. I appreciate that I haven't had to put up with either the worst of toxic Trumpism. They're not my neighbours, it's not my neighbourhood, and secondly, the sort of sanctimonious woke left of America. So I haven't lived that this last 4 years. So I mean, I think maybe when Trump won last time, I think I was a little bit too sneery about it all, and I think I failed to recognise that a lot of people are upset and pissed off. And I do love America. So, I mean, chin up.
I don't fucking hate it.
America. Death to America. Look at you.
I'm joking. I love America. But I think people, despite the fact that he got a record number of votes for someone who's lost, because you're a loser now, Donald. You're a
loser.
I think maybe people just realised that he didn't really achieve what he set out to or what he said he was going to, and they just had enough. Although I still think, I know you're saying we need a bit of boring in America, but Biden, he's a bit, the guy would probably, actually hearing him speak would probably solve my insomnia.
Sleepy Joe.
Sleepy Joe indeed.
I saw somebody outside, there's an image doing the rounds of guy outside the White House with a placard, and it just said, "Who's sleepy now, bitch?" which it's perfect. That's like the most American political slogan imaginable. Shall we move on to something more cheery? Decapitation, religious extremism, general terror in Europe. It's depressing because I
just thought we had got to that point where, especially with this pandemic going on, that we had bigger things to worry about. And I didn't think that cartoons would yet again be the cause of somebody going out there and chopping someone's head off.
Nothing's changed.
Well, apparently not. No. Plus ça change, as they say. This grotesque murder of a teacher in Paris, Samuel Paty.
In like a really leafy suburb as well. Like it was. It's not like you're looking at some Middle Eastern theocracy where the rule of law doesn't exist and things like that can be commonplace. It hit. I know it shouldn't, or maybe it should, but it hits a lot harder to me when it's closer to your home. And it's not like it only happens in other places in Europe. It happens in England as well. It seems to happen everywhere in Europe at the moment.
It does. So we had France first. The barbaric beheadings in Paris, and then churchgoers in Nice. Goodness knows why. And the teacher was beheaded for showing cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad to his students.
And this is in the context of talking about freedom of expression. And Samuel Paty is the gentleman who's no longer with us because some guy decided to cut his head off in the streets because he was teaching a class about freedom of expression in a Western democracy. Them facts should really set alarm bells off in people's heads. And one of the worst aspects about this for me is the fact that, and you'll know very well, and this is true of the UK as well, Muslim communities are very well knit. They're very close. There's a real, that's one thing, religious observance provides that probably secularism doesn't, is this idea of community. Everyone's in everyone's business. Everyone knows everything. Everyone knows the daughter of the son of the, it's all, word gets around really quick. And what we saw in France was an example of that again, where children in the classroom were essentially informing on this teacher.
That's ridiculous, little grasses.
Yeah.
Fucking smack them all. Did their parents ever teach them, don't be a grass?
Snitches get stitches.
Hello? Yeah. Although, in this case, it
didn't work out that way.
Snitches, yeah, no. And then Macron decided to come out afterwards and, make a very, very strong statement about this, saying, we shouldn't give in to Islamist separatism. He said, Islamist separatism is threatening to take hold of some Muslim communities around France, although I think we're a bit too late there. And then in response to that, you had the likes of Erdogan in Turkey and Imran Khan in Pakistan just absolutely blasting him for his comments, saying that he was supposed to be, healing divides, uniting people, and, Imran Khan then tried to call on Facebook to ban Islamophobic content, and it just makes me laugh, something like this, because, Imran Khan gets riled up about some cartoon sharing in France. Meanwhile, he's been silent about the Uyghur Muslim population in China. Because, let's face it, it's easy to boycott France when none of the people in your country can actually afford French products, let's face it. But it's very difficult to boycott China, which pretty much owns your country. They've built nearly every new road and building there. Where money talks, baby, money talks.
Yeah, the hypocrisies are there for everyone to see, but what concerns me, and I feel like a broken record with this, and this reliably happens every time.
It always happens. We have the same fucking discussion all of the time.
And Islamic terrorism is a huge problem, but then there's a secondary issue that the Muslim community took issue with Macron's statements and the cartoons. They took more issue with that than they did the act of Islamic extremism, of a man being decapitated for trying to uphold free expression in a secular democracy. We saw people calling for the boycott of France and products in general. We saw demonstrations outside the French embassy in the UK until the police came along and said, "Fuck off home, we're in a pandemic." I don't think they said that. I might be paraphrasing.
So it's like these people are okay to go and protest. Where's the social distancing there? And yeah. I just feel that, I don't know about you, but I just feel that these countries are gaslighting France. It's like they're hurting right now. They've had multiple terrorist attacks, and instead of getting support, they're just being told, well, it's kind of your fault,
Yeah.
You're doing this, you provoked me, bitch. This is it's blaming the victims here. I don't understand why France and why Macron need to apologise. Macron was standing up for his country, which he has every right to do so. And what I find quite interesting is that, people talk about tolerance and respect and respecting different faiths and cultures in your country, blah, blah, blah. But you just think, so these terrorists were supposedly outraged by these blasphemous cartoons and by French racism, because we have to throw that in there as well now. It's all against French racism and secularism. That's to blame. And if that's the case, then why is it there haven't been any terrorist attacks by Christians in Muslim countries who, if we're gonna justify terrorist attacks, then they would have plenty of just cause for doing so, don't you think? And yet nobody seems to do that. Why is that? And the reason for that, and people keep shying away from it, is that it's simply this toxic, horrific ideology, which is Islamism, and it's all these militants riling up even ordinary Muslims, and because they have an agenda, we know that, and yet instead of standing up to such people and saying no, fuck you, people are excusing them. There were so many articles. There was one in the FT of all places, Financial Times.
Did they pull that in the end? I think they pulled it. Did they retract it?
Yeah, they removed it. It was a letter, and it was very critical of France and Macron, and Macron wrote in a letter in response to it, but the article had been removed for quote-unquote factual inaccuracies, because Macron's letter accused the author of misquoting him. He said he'd never talked of Islamic separatism. He said Islamist separatism, which is very, very different. So I'm surprised they pulled it completely. It would have been good to see that correction on the piece. And then Politico Europe also published a really, really disingenuous op-ed by some French academic talking about France's extreme form of secularism and its embrace of blasphemy. I mean, if Christians and Jews are not free from being mocked, then why should Islam get any special protection? If anything, you should be privileged that you're getting mocked as well. It means, you're part of the club.
Yeah, 3 points here, I suppose. Maybe 4. Depends how long I rant for. But we'll probably be debating what terms are bigoted or not bigoted as Islamists are cutting people's heads off in the streets. That'll be, Western tolerance for you. Decrying Islamophobia as the knife comes in, which is not very useful at all. Second thing is, I think we've probably missed our opportunity, or France certainly have. I certainly think the UK is on the same path to have dented this ideology when it mattered. I want people to understand how much the liberals and the left, my friends, my people, my tribe, have fucked up here, because Imagine, if you will, the Westboro Baptist Church, this tiny crackpot family in America who turned up with nasty white words on placards, relatively peaceful, didn't carry out acts of terrorism, but the entire fucking country pointed a finger at them and said their rhetoric, their beliefs, their form of religious zealotry was so unpalatable to us that it blew up. One tiny little crackpot family, and it blew up. The entire world knew who they were. There was nothing but scorn and ridicule for them from all corners of the world. Now, bear in mind, Islamists are the Westboro Baptist Church times a million. And it's not just one family in one little crackpot place in America. It's a well-subscribed, well-funded movement that's spread out all across Europe. That's even before you even begin to address the problems of the Middle East. And what have we done for decades? We've turned a blind eye due to cultural sensitivity. We've not called out the misogyny, the homophobia, the rising calls for violence. We've not even discussed the transgressions against freedom of expression, what you can and can't say about a particular faith or its prophets in the West anymore. We've let all that go. It's already gone from us to the point where we know if I held a Draw Mohammed cartoon tomorrow, I would have to go into hiding for the rest of my life for good reasons. That brings me on to my third and final point. The newspapers have dropped it again. The newspapers have, I don't even know what they're for anymore. They wouldn't print the cartoons, the majority of them. It wasn't even shown on the news. Now, I get it. There's an argument here to say, look, the newspapers, we have staff, we have families, we have children, we don't want to endanger anyone. I get the argument and I respect that argument. I just wish they'd state it publicly. I just wish they'd stop saying we don't want to cause offence by publishing these cartoons, because newspapers, tabloids, journalists have never give a fuck about offending anyone ever. It's what they do. All of a sudden they care about people's feelings when a cartoon's involved. I don't think so. They're scared of reprisals, and they should be. Just be honest about it. Just print the fact that we did not display these cartoons in our pages because we are scared of violent reprisals, and I will applaud their honesty. That'll move the conversation forward a bit more, surely.
So I'm not as bothered if they don't publish the cartoons. What I'm more bothered about is the fact that nobody's really making a big deal about this. Have you noticed do you remember once upon a time when there was an attack and there'd be so much commentary to read from mainstream newspapers, and now it's silence pretty much? There's the odd piece here and there, but you don't hear as much about it anymore. And I think people, do you think people have just got used to this and think, well, it's part of life now?
Absolutely. These random attacks, seemingly random attacks, are just par for the course now. And I fell into that trap. I am somebody who follows these things. I'm somebody who releases content about these things. And I had forgot about that stabbing that happened in June where 3 people died. I think a sort of Libyan terrorist.
The Reading one. So did I. I was like, shit, was that this year?
Yeah, and that happened. Stabbed 3 people. There's some discussion about whether or not that was a homophobic attack as well. I think the 3 victims did happen to be gay. I will need to check the facts on that. Please do look that up rather than take my word for it. But he was running around with a knife, shouting Allahu Akbar, killed 3 people in a London park in the middle of the summer. And
but didn't they say that was more to do with mental health issues? I mean, I know he said Allah.
Well, he shouted Allahu Akbar. He's put in a plea. He seems to be being tried as you would be for doing something like that. It is being reported as terrorism. So we'll see how that goes. But how fast that kind of violence can just happen in a London park in June and fall out of my memory, because I'm so used to hearing and reading about terrorist attacks in Europe now, to me is absolutely terrifying. And it seems to slow down and then pick up and slow down and pick up, and you just can't help but feel there's just an endless supply of jihadists in Europe just waiting to be activated.
Look at Vienna. Not long after the Paris attack, there was a terrorist attack in the Austrian capital of Vienna. Gunmen went around and killed about 4 people, injuring about 24 others. And I think ISIS claimed responsibility for it. I mean, this was supposed to be the ISIS that we had defeated, right?
Yeah.
Oh, hello, we've popped up again, like that whack-a-mole game.
People thinking of Islamic extremism as an organisation that you can stamp out, or a country.
It doesn't have
borders.
You can't.
Yeah, it doesn't have a hierarchy. It's an ideology that has already spread and infected everywhere it's known to be.
But you know, there was a tweet that I saw, and it was by Five Pillars as I like to call them, and they said there was a huge protest march took place in Karachi, Pakistan, to defend the honour of the Prophet Muhammad against the blasphemous behaviour of the French state. # France supporting Islamophobia, and our pal Concrete Milk then quoted this and said, "Nice of Five Pillars to issue yet another inadvertent reminder that quote-unquote Islamophobia is used as a euphemism for blasphemy." And that's a very, very pertinent point. So when people keep saying, oh, don't provoke certain communities, why can't we all get along? It's not about that. It really isn't. It's about the bigger picture here. These groups will never be fucking happy no matter what. It doesn't matter. It could be so-called blasphemy one minute. It could be something innocuous the next. They don't really give a shit. Their whole modus operandi is, their motive is to take over the world. It's to spread this vile ideology, and they'll do it by whatever means possible. They don't give a shit. You know, even if there was no blasphemy, they'd still find an excuse.
Yeah, and and obviously not all Muslims. We have to do this. We have to separate this. I mean, there's two things that really concerns me. The first one being,
we didn't even talk about Muslims. We're talking about Islamists. We're talking about terrorists.
Yeah.
Not once have we said throughout this conversation right now that, oh, it's them damn Muslims. Although I know there are people who would think that, but we haven't even said that at all.
Yeah, I mean, the people that would think that, they wouldn't be as numerous if normal, rational, sensible liberals took hold of the conversation instead of letting the far right, basically tell the truth. Now, the far right, for all the conspiracies, all the propaganda, all the nefarious solutions they put forward, which should be rejected wholesale, they have noticed that we have a problem with radical Islam, and they say true things about it that the left doesn't, and that is a massive problem if you want to solve this issue. I get really worried as well when all I see from Muslim interest groups, Five Pillars you've mentioned as well, and Cage, the prominent ones that have the ear of influential people, or get news columns who are thought of as credible and authentic voices for the Muslim community, who weren't elected, don't speak for communities as far as I'm aware. They will always come down on the side of blasphemy. They will always come down in defense of Islam. They will never defend liberal principles against attacks from jihadists. They will always spin it in a way to make it a story about Muslim victimhood, bigotry, or attacks on their faith. And that's really worrying to me.
I really worry about the impact all of this is having on free speech. The struggle for free speech, self-censorship in response to these threats is not the answer. It's not the answer. We do not cave into a bunch of bullies, because that's what they are. They're bullies who are threatening us all, and you don't respond to bullies by giving in. You fucking stand up to them.
Yeah, Iram, god damn it. I'm with you on that. Shall we talk about something else, or look at the questions, or cry? What do you reckon?
Yeah. I'm just gonna cry into a big bar of chocolate. How about that?
I am honestly on this issue. When I started commentating on this issue publicly a lifetime ago, before I had grey hair, I was slightly optimistic. It was almost a naive, come on guys, have you seen this problem? Let's all deal with this kind of attitude.
Yay.
You think that if you just point out the problem...
You're like that new kid in the office, weren't you?
Yeah! I'm jaded now. And because I've just seen everyone around me just drop the ball on this issue. There is no appetite to combat it whatsoever. I mean, I joked today on Twitter that if we could just convince people or the left that Islamists had gone around misgendering people or saying naughty, outmoded, racialized words, maybe the left would give a shit.
Oh my God.
You know, if we could just pretend.
Greg Clarke from the FA, the chairman of the FA.
Oh God, yeah.
He's had to resign after using the term "quote unquote" coloured footballers. And he's apologised, said, you know, I've worked overseas, USA, had to use the term people of colour, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry, but, okay, I get why coloured is now deemed problematic because of its connotations with racism and segregation, but then why is people of colour okay? I've never understood that. But anyway, you know, as a cisgender person of beige colouring, I don't understand why he had to resign. I mean, a simple apology like, look, sorry, I use very outdated language, clumsy of me, but making him quit, really? Is that the future now, where somebody says something that isn't completely sanitary, they don't know what the up-to-date words are now in our new Woktionary, so they have to be cancelled or quit. Really, what just happened to... I mean, do you remember the days where people, if they said something a bit silly, they would just apologise, you move on?
Yeah.
And now it's just a massive rolling story, non-stop.
One quick thing about him, I think he's got a bit of a litany of un-PC comments he's made. Nothing I've seen there makes me think he should be fired, but I may have missed something. I'll hold my hands up there. It does seem to be the coloured thing that was the straw that broke the camel's back. But it seems daft because, as far as I could see, he used coloured to describe black people as he was being anti-racist. He was decrying the problem of racism. It's similar to like Benedict Cumberbatch. I think he used coloured to describe black actors in America.
He did, and the people did erupt with fury.
And they're not listening. If you're going to treat people who are anti-racist this exact same way as you are treating racists, then you don't care about racism. You care about some sort of tribal dogma that you're trying to impose on the rest of us. Are we that comfortable now? Is there not enough real racism to fight that a man that says coloured has to get the chop?
I mean, do these people not have anything else to be outraged by? You know, just go and eat a bar of chocolate.
Yeah, chill out, have some choc.
More productive. You know, I actually remember when a racist boy at school called me a chocolate bar. So I was like, I looked at myself, I'm like, I'm not even that dark, but okay.
Sweet and tasty, that's essentially what they were saying, Iram.
Oh, wow, do you know, I
think you misjudged that boy.
Damn, it could have been the start of a beautiful friendship. Damn.
Should we have a look at some questions?
Yeah.
Creative Invert has asked, I know you probably won't like talking about an individual, but not want to shy away from difficult topics. What do you make of Maajid's general attitude of the last 6 to 12 months? Have you noticed the difference from previous? I think we've pretty much called that, haven't we?
We've rinsed that out. Oh, if Iram had to pick either Donald Trump or Joe Biden as a partner to survive the dance-off on Strictly, who would she choose?
Who's asked that?
And why? That's C. Chum World.
Thank you for the hard-hitting question.
I think... Oh, who would I pick to survive the dance-off? I'd say I would actually reflect the election results, and I would go for Trump.
Yeah, man's got some moves. Do you see his little YMCA video?
It was such an Uncle G dance. It was such a dad dance.
Do you think the Americans realise YMCA is a massive gay anthem, though?
Especially considering who his core voters are, that would be absolutely ironic, wouldn't it?
Yeah. What else? I think we may have had some questions on the old Facebook, which I got banned from the other day for a total of 5 minutes. Yeah, I woke up to check, and I was told my Facebook page, which I barely use, I use it to share news links or clips from the show. Just got told that it had violated the community standards of Facebook, and it gives some examples of not direct examples, but what would violate. He said like hateful content, things like that. And I appealed it, and within minutes they went, sorry, it's been reactivated. So that was my little deplatforming drama. But again, it's kind of big technology just on a whim. I mean, I don't think anyone sat there in big tech who's got it in for me who's clicking a button saying fuck this guy, I don't like his views. I think I've been caught up in a algorithm, or someone's flagged something I've done maliciously and they've took.
I had that as well for my page Seda. So
right.
I got a notification on Facebook saying a post had been removed because it violated community standards, and ironically, it was a piece about how bad jihadism is, and that went against community standards.
Hateful. Okay.
I know.
So this is a good question, actually. Davey Anderson on Facebook has asked, the psychological processes Trump supporters are going through at present in the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Are they still in denial? So Davey invoking the Kubler-Ross model of grief there. I think they are very much still in denial, hence all the wild
definitely
conspiracies.
In denial.
Yeah.
He'll probably be dragged, kicking and screaming out the White House with a cheeseburger in his gob.
I think he's a coward. I think he talks a good game, but I think he's a coward, and I think when push comes to shove, he will find a way to leave when he's supposed to, but he'll make it seem like it's because he's the virtuous one. There'll be a way that he'll term it or phrase it, and he'll do it without directly conceding or admitting that he lost the election. But he will make an exit, and he will exit. I have full faith that man will be kicked out of the White House when he's supposed to. Watch this little clip of audio come back to haunt me when the Trump dictatorship raises an orange flag over the White House.
I had a conversation with somebody about this the other day. Sorry, I know we're supposed to finish Trump, but, their response was Trump is better than Biden only because of this progressive agenda that we're seeing by the Democrats and people on the left, and you need somebody to stand up to that. I don't know what you thought of that.
That's interesting, and I certainly think the initial election of Trump was in no small part a response to that, for sure. And I think people on the other side who were blindsided by it were very slow or unwilling, and many of them still are, to acknowledge that aspect of it, how much their far left wokeness had pushed people the other way. This ultra PC, complete re-racialization of society had pushed people the wrong way. Not necessarily that they were racist or they were transphobic, but the fact that all these things were being hoisted on people and being used as a litmus test for your virtue everywhere you looked has got to have an effect on your normal voter who just cares about finding work or healthcare or childcare or being able to, live free and enjoy the good old American life. These are these things that the far left seem to obsess about don't really play well with your average voter, luckily. So I don't think that's going to go away. I still think the culture war will continue on. I just hope it does so at a tamer pace.
I think all these, some of the people who are saying, "Oh, America can heal. This is the end of populism." I think that's wishful thinking. It's the same kind of thinking that we've had with this news that there's now a coronavirus vaccine. It's going to solve everything. Not necessarily. Even with a vaccine, there'll still be social distancing measures in place for a very long time because the vaccine won't be available to everybody at once. So we need to be cautiously optimistic is what I'm saying. This is nowhere the end of populism by any means. And if it had been, then Joe Biden would have stormed this.
I agree. So question for you. Let's just say the vaccine's ready to go by the end of the week, just hypothetically in my fantasy world, and you get the call, Iram, you've been selected. You're one of our first people to have this incredible new vaccine. What are you going to say? Are you confident? Are you happy? Do you have any concerns about trying a vaccine that's been rushed out.
Autism and disabilities. Okay, no, I'm not an anti-vaxxer.
I mean, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I mean, some people might have some legitimate concerns about how fast this may turn around in terms of it's not the standard process.
Actually, I have a response to that. So, as part of my job, we had somebody write a piece for us on this very subject, addressing these concerns. And actually, the reason that the vaccine could be made so quickly was because of the SARS and the MERS virus. It was kind of left over from that, really. So
it's like when you have a bit of chicken and a few bits of veg at the end of the week and you throw in a curry into the slow cooker or something, isn't it? I mean, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I don't think it's much more technical than that.
No, I think that is absolutely spot on.
That's just science, yeah.
I would say it's no more complicated than just whipping up a fajita at the end of the night. But I know what you're saying. But that's the reason why the vaccine could be made so quickly is because of the whole SARS and MERS viruses, which all, by the way, fizzled out. And there was never a vaccine for that, let's remember. So
look at you bringing the fucking facts to this podcast. Yeah. I mean, it took us an hour,
facting it away,
but we got some brilliant content, because you're a real journalist. I think we should probably end on a high then, what do you reckon? Unless you want to pick something else up or talk about something else.
No, I'll end it while I'm good. While I'm on a high.
While you're on a high.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin it by saying 4 more years.
4 more years. Build that wall. Oh, I mean, I have refrained from overt Trump bashing for 4 years. I've been critical where I should be critical, but I think I've kept my head because I don't think it really does much apart from signal your virtue. I certainly don't think it convinces his followers. But now all that's over, what a fucking ball bag.
Do you know... Well, he's facing many, many lawsuits now. I think that's probably one of the reasons why he didn't want to leave office. Because then he'll have to answer to them, although he's very good at winning lawsuits himself, so we'll see what happens. But, I mean, I was getting sick of the constant Trump coverage. I mean, I was just like, is there seriously nothing else going on in the news? I get it, he's orange and he's a twat. There's so much to say about him, but please, can we move on now?
I think when we look back at this, we won't look back at a sort of...
In anger.
Very monk. We won't look back at a sort of the reign of a fascist dictator, as people were screaming. We'll look back at the clown president. Look at that fucking idiot. Can you remember that idiot? Can you remember when he said this? Can you remember when he did that?
He was not a fascist by any means, no, but he certainly did bring America into disrepute. The world.
So this topic is certainly to be continued. He will hang on to his presidential title for as long as possible before conceding to Joe Biden. So we'll see how it goes. I'm open to anything, but God damn it, Maajid, stop spreading conspiracies.
God's sake, brother, get a hold of yourself.
And on that note, it's been a pleasure.
It has indeed.
Thank you for listening to the Godless Spellchecker podcast. The podcast is a one-man operation, produced in my spare time away from my day job, and I love making it for you. If you enjoy what you hear, please consider lending some support. The show is entirely listener supported. I don't sell anything, I don't run ads, and given the alternative and unpopular focus of my content, it's very unlikely to find a sponsor. So there are a number of ways you can support and chip in and help improve the show and give me more time to produce more content. You can become a patron supporter and pledge a monetary amount per month or per episode by visiting patreon.com/gspellchecker. If you can't lend monetary support right now, don't worry, there's other ways you can help the podcast too. You can share it on your various social media networks, or take a moment to leave a review wherever you listen to it. Your support is massively appreciated. Thank you. Think we've all learned something here today?